Welcome back to the first episode of the third season of the Looking into Wine podcast. Timorasso, might you ask, what is it? Why am I talking about Timorasso? Well, Timorasso is one of the leading white grape varieties of Italy. It's one of the few that has the potential to produce full-body, long-aging white wine. It is produced in the northeast of Italy and is quite a modern reiteration, actually. It has been growing for decades and decades in the south of Piedmont, near Derthona, but it was thanks to Walter Massa. Then in the late 90s, then he started believing in the grape varieties again, and it now is becoming one of the most age-worthy and the most talked white grape variety of Piedmont, thanks to this richness. As you discover with my amazing guest today, Michael Palij, Master of Wine, who has an extensive background on Italian grape varieties. He has been working with Italian wines for over 30 years, and he wrote an article, and he used to write the Italian guide for the WSET. He was actually one of the first exporters for Walter Massa wine in the late 90s, and his first interaction with Walter, how Walter shaped the history of Timorasso. And we also explored why Timorasso is such an interesting grape variety, how does it like to grow, what is the environment it likes to grow. And also we touch on new grape varieties and then are interesting him and other specialists from Piedmont, specific the white grape varieties. And so, really in-depth conversation of one of the most exciting grape varieties of north of Italy. But before we start to the show, to remember to subscribe, and if you haven't done it already. But if you've already done it, thank you. Now on with the show. Hi, I'm Mattia Scarpazza, and this is the Looking into Wine podcast. Wine and winemaking can be complex, but this podcast has a simple mission. We want to give you the skills and tools to harness your passion about wine. Through this series, we will shine a spotlight on some of the different regions, process, and concepts that shape the fascinating world of wine. I hope you enjoy the show and your own journey looking into wine. Welcome to the Looking into Wine podcast. I'm Mattia Scarpazza, your host, and today with me I have the founder of Wine Traders, a specialist wine distributor in the UK. He is a master of wine and has been visiting Italy since '95 and is in his buying trips. And today with him we are exploring a really interesting region in Piedmont, Derthona, aka Derthona, and to talk about Timorasso and the key wine producer of the region, Walter Massa of Vigneti Massa. I'm very happy to welcome to the show Michael Palij, Master of Wine.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me in your office. It's very beautiful and it's exciting to meeting you. And I've seen some of the article about and some of your history about Italy. Really are regarded one of the most experts in Italian wine. So it's very exciting to have you on the show. So how did you meet Walter and how did you start working with him at Wine Traders?
So that's back in the late 1990s, and I was actually out for dinner with my Gavi producer, and this crazy looking guy, with wild hair, and I don't know if you've met Walter, but he's very tall, he's very thin, and he does have this kind of wild hair, and he came into the restaurant, and I was having dinner with Luigi, and he came right up to the table and he said, you, and he pointed at me and he said, you're the importer from England. And so I looked up at him and I said, maybe, who wants to know? And he said, I'm Walter Massa and you have to come and taste my wines. And he left me this dog-eared business card. It must have been his last one. And on it, it was before, I think before mobile phones, but anyway, it was just his address, nothing else. And then he dashed out again. And I said to Luigi, I said, my God, who is that? And he said, he said, that's Walter Massa. He's crazy. And I said, that sounds interesting. So the next day I had some time and I drove up to Walter's house, which is also the winery. And to this day, his mum lives upstairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then the main floor is sort of the kitchen, the bathroom, the office, and the tasting room, and his garage. And then underneath is the winery. It hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. So so I went there, and he told me the story of Timorasso, and I was pretty intrigued. And so I tasted some, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then I said to him, I said, well, does it age? And I remember he went down to the cellar and he pulled out, this bottle was 20 years old, right? And I remember tasting and thinking, I can't remember in Italy, really tasting something that aged like that, like maybe Best Suave or Best Verdicchio or something. But, it was just astonishing. And I was like, wow, I've got to buy this.
Yes, I mean, obviously when you met him, it was just when he started. You said in the early late 2000 you met him. It was just a few years after he really started bottling. And
well, I mean, obviously his family had been there since 1871, but on pretty hard times. I mean, really, one up from subsistence agriculture. And then there were 6 hectares of Timorasso in the world, and Walter owned all of them.
Yeah.
So it was, and I describe it like this sort of tiger's habitat, that was shrinking every year, and it's funny, I go back, I obviously see him all the time now and go back and, well, we're friends, we go out, we get drunk, we have a nice time, we talk about the world. And, and I remember one time he said, that the only support he had was his family, really his mom.
Wow. I mean, obviously, Timorasso was very popular back before his time, before the Second World War. It was quite a popular grape. How did it end up being only 6 hectares or only in the hands of...
like so many things in Italy, the Italians are their own worst enemies, for this sort of thing. And they're sitting on these... just amazing resources. This is how I describe it, okay? So imagine Italy had no other cities except Rome, okay? There were no cities in Italy except Rome. Italy would still be the world's most visited country.
Yeah.
But now you add on Florence and Siena and Venice and Naples. So no wonder nobody goes to Lecce or, Vicenza, because why would you, right? And so that's Italy's, for me, their secret weapon, but also the biggest weakness, because it kind of has too much. So the story of Timorasso is a story of, I mean, really this unsung hero, but you got to understand Timorasso. So this is a grape variety that has everything negative going for it, apart from it makes great wine.
Yeah.
So the yield is low. Okay. So the yield, when I say the yield per plant, is low. Okay. Then it has a really thick skin. So when you crush it, the yield is low. Okay. Right. And then, even though it has this thick skin, which you would think would make it immune to disease, it's highly susceptible to oidium and to botrytis. So if you don't do a really strict green harvest and really work the canopy, you get all kinds of problems with rot. Yeah. So if you think about, it's a low cropping variety with a thick skin, so it's a pig to work with. And then on top of that, you need to really put a lot of work into the vineyard. Come on, it's no reason that nobody grows it anymore. So it used to be the original Gavi grape variety that, which is why Gavi was so famous. But post-phylloxera, and then obviously post-Second World War, it was replanted with Cortese. Because Cortese is so much easier to grow, it's higher yielding and so on. And so nobody wanted to, and can you blame them? Like, why would you grow a grape variety that nobody wanted to buy, that gives you a really low yield? So you do all that work and still nobody cares. Like, why would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an economic disaster.
A disaster waiting to happen, And so that was, but the quality was so good. And I remember buying it. So I said to Walter, I'm going to take 50 cases and I will pay you for them, but you'll never see me again because nobody is going to drink this weird wine called Timorasso. And so I showed it. The first customer I went to see, I remember showing it to him. I told him a story about Gavi, about Walter, about Timorasso, and he tasted it and he goes, Jesus, he says, I'll take 50 cases. And I said to him, well, sales have been good, but I'll see what I can do. And I rang Walter, right? And I was like, Walter, you're not going to believe this. I sold it all. I need more.
Wow.
And he's a bit of a rock star now. I don't know if you've ever been to see him. He's sort of, every time I go there, there's sort of groupies, Timorasso groupies hanging out outside.
Yeah.
But, I mean, honestly, no one is happier, for his success, because imagine working not just like your life, right? Your dad's life, your grandfather's life, your great grandfather's life. You're preserving this grape variety. Nobody cares. So nobody deserves it more than him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was listening the other day. They even wrote a song about Timorasso in Italian the other day. It was like it was very interesting. The Timorasso for me is so interesting because it really, as you said, there's only a few Italian grape variety that can shine with age. It's Verdicchio and the Top Suave, and Timorasso he has become this cult of long aging, very powerful wines, and compare also sometimes I compare it to like almost a Barolo, white Barolo, and because it can age a long time and it is very small production, and I mean it's growing the interest is very much there, and the number of people producing Timorasso has grown, and it's all thanks to Walter and his effort. What would you compare? If nobody has ever tried a Timorasso before, what would you compare it to?
Well, I always compare it to white Burgundy because I think it's got the complexity, the ability to age, and the structural components. However, it is seldom aged in oak. It doesn't need oak.
Okay.
So it has that kind of natural creaminess. So I guess if I were narrowing down white Burgundy, it would probably be more like Chablis rather than the Côte d'Or, but or Alsace. There's times when the richness of it reminds me of really top Pinot Gris.
Okay, yeah, definitely the richness shows, and the fresh acidity as well. There's a lot of freshness, and for me also the other interesting thing, Timorasso is also one of these grapes that then is coming out from Piedmont and then having a massive revival. Think of like Pelaverga or other grapes, which is more to show the complexity of grape variety of Piedmont is just incredible. But so you work with Walter, and but also now he also produces other grape variety, other wines, other than the Timorasso. What wine does he produce?
Sure. Just before I answer that, I wanted to go back to your comment about Piemonte, because I think it's really interesting. But, we don't even need to go to Pelaverga and the reds, right? Even the whites are amazing. So if you think about Nascetta or Erbeluce, these are great varieties along with, and, obviously we've got Favorita and Arneas, but maybe more people know about those, and Moscato is planted everywhere. But really, is it Nascetta's turn next, or is it Erbeluce's turn next? Because these are local grape varieties that are phenomenal. Yeah. So, and then that's just the whites, right? And then we can talk about, Grignolino and Freisa and Ruquet and Pelaverga. So, and that's just Piemonte. Then we need to talk about Lombardia or Tuscany or, And this is La Fortezza of Italy. It really has this amazing repository of grape varieties, which is what 30 years later every time I go to Italy, I fall in love again.
Yeah, it's incredible, and the intensity of the producers as well. Definitely, Walter has been the most famous of this, growing the small grape variety and trying to bring him back, and believing in Timorasso and other grapes, and other people doing it with other grape varieties. So that's definitely inspired by Walter and his success and the quality of Timorasso.
So the other grapes that he does, predominantly the other two big ones would be Barbera, and I think he has more Barbera in fact planted than Timorasso. Croatina,
okay,
and then he has Freisa, a little bit of Freisa, Moscato.
Okay, that's the classic Piemontese. Whereabout is Derthona? Where is the region where it grows? Because obviously a lot of people would know about Barolo. Whereabout is in the map of Piedmont, if you could?
Yeah, so let's say it's in the east, so it's towards the border with Lombardia, and it's the foothills. Grape growing in Italy is all about hills, so that's where the good stuff comes from. So it's, if you like, the northernmost foothills of the Ligurian Alps. So if you drove straight south from there, you'd come to Genoa.
Okay.
So it's, as the crow flies, 60, 70 kilometers north of Genoa. But it's over the Ligurian Alps. So there's very, very little maritime influence there. It is highly continental.
Okay, so there's quite high altitude and it has a good diurnal range.
Not desperately high altitude.
Okay.
So it's 250, 300 meters, so not as high as La Mora.
Okay.
And, certainly not as high as, I don't know, Etna or parts of Alto Adige. So it's the altitude, I suppose, is less important than the topography.
Yeah.
So he's got really good sites, so that's key, and protected from the maritime influence.
Yeah.
So he's got high day-night, this thing we call continentality. The Italians call it escursione termica.
Okay. And obviously, I mean, the production is based on the three Timorassos, or four at the moment. You have the Costa del Vento and 4 different sites. Yeah. How are they different? What would you pick?
So there's Costa del Vento, Sterpi and Montecitorio. Then there's Derthona, which is sort of the blend, if you like.
Okay.
And then there's another wine under that, which is Piccola Derthona.
Okay.
Okay. And the differences between those are just soil. So those are the key differences. So there's nothing different about, there's no difference about, how the grapes are grown or how they vinified, or one's in oak or one isn't in oak. It's just this mixture of these classic Piemontese soils between clay, limestone and sand. And then there's just slight differences between those. Some differences in exposure. Mm-hmm. Costa del Vento is the highest, but its soil is kind of the key driver there. And he doesn't make them all every year, so oftentimes they'll get blended in and whatever. And there's other vineyards, Gattopardo, as well, is the key one.
Okay. And what would you, vintage-wise, what would you be your top vintages to try out if you could?
Gosh, if I have to. 13, 16. I like very much. 04, 19. I haven't tasted much out of 21, but I think some of the 21s could be good.
And obviously, Timorasso can also be used in a bit of oak age as well, or was mostly stainless steel. Or he works with Walter.
Walter works with stainless, so I don't. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm sure there must be some producer somewhere who's doing oak, but it's it doesn't really need it.
Yeah, there's that richness and the natural richness, which is really, really relevant. Okay. Yeah, very much. And so, what was it for you? Also, one of the things that then I was looking up on the bottles of Walter, it has this QR code, which I never seen it before. How does that work? It's really interesting. Like, he's using a bit of...
I know, it's kind of weird, right? He's got this high technology part to his operation. And every time I talk to him about it, I'm like, Walter, you're supposed to be this, farmer with dirt under your fingernails. And here you are with this fancy. So he's using a form of Stelvin, but in the top of the cap is an NFC chip. So that if you turn on NFC on your phone and you scan the top of the bottle, then it takes you to his website. So I think he's a bit worried about counterfeiting, but also, he wants to tell the story of Timorasso. Yeah. I think it's still all in Italian, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, I saw it on the website. I was like, wow, I never seen anybody do it. I saw some QR code to scan, but having a proper NFT tap-in thing.
Yeah, really. Yeah. And on his WhatsApp handle, his symbol, his picture is NFC.
Oh wow, he really believes in it. Wow, and I mean, obviously, when you said about counterfeiting, it must be. It shows how a cult has become his wine. Obviously, they're distributed by wine traders in the UK, but obviously they are found globally. What's the production like? What was sort of... I mean, it still is quite small producer.
It is quite small, but it's growing. He's acquiring more vineyards. He's replanting. It's still hundreds of thousands of bottles. So the total production's under 500,000 bottles of everything that he makes.
Okay. And you, obviously, in the UK must be a quite good market
we're a good market, and we were his first market. We were really the first people to go there. I think definitely his first export market for sure.
Wow, must be very. You've seen all the growth and from like an unknown going to the first client in the UK, and now people talking about Timorasso is really...
It's so gratifying, because that's if our company's mission is to help these small producers find a market.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the big companies, and I know this is a huge generalization, but the big companies with the marketing departments and the sales teams and so on, they may have a crack team of viticulturalists and so on, but they need to keep the wheels of commerce spinning. They need to produce a certain amount every year to satisfy the markets and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that with the smaller production, the local grape varieties that nobody's heard of, with no marketing stories, and as I said, the dirt under their fingernails, those are the people we like to find and champion.
Yeah.
Because that's where the interest lies.
Okay. And where people can get your wines and wine trade, what can people reach you if they're interested to list the Walter Massa wine on the wine list? Or
So you can come to our website at winetradersuk.com, but the wines are well listed in the UK. So they're available through a number of independent stockists, and a quick Google you'll find plenty of stockists. They're also in the on trade. So we don't deal with restaurants directly, but I know that they're in some really great London restaurants. And that's nice to see, and Walter loves that.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I mean, it's the fantastic wine. I tried them a few times, and I really enjoyed them. And I never had the occasion to try one aged, matured. As I know it is amazing, and I read about it so many times.
Well, I put a bottle in the fridge if you want to try it. It's not aged, but we can open it if you want.
And I mean, I love to try this, the Derthona, the 2019.
Yeah, so this is 2019. So we've sold out of this. We're just shipping the 2020 now.
Hey, Garnet, gold.
Yeah, it's and that's the thick skin. And remember when you're tasting this, so this is just stainless steel. There is no oak on this. And when you stick your nose in that creaminess, a lot of people say, oh, it's aged in barrel, but it's not.
Yeah, and I definitely think I get the creaminess. It's almost like a lemon cream or like something.
Yeah, lemon custard, stone fruit.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic.
And I pick up, there's also this kind of, so there's the stone fruit, as I said, there's peach and nectarine and lemon. But there's also a floral note to it, which it always takes me to Timorasso, and indeed takes me to a lot of other Italian white grape varieties, native Italian white grape varieties.
Yeah, and then you
like acacia.
Now that you say it, I can definitely smell it. It's just voluptuous and really drives you in. You want to
just want to, exactly.
Yeah, you want just to drink it, which I'm going to do now.
I've got to drive, so I'm spitting that out, but you obviously don't need to. And then on the palate, the weight, right? I mean, it's 14% alcohol, great persistence, but that lovely streak of acidity that's holding it all together.
Yeah, no, the acidity is definitely is there, is present, and this is the Derthona, and also the other couple of cuvées, which they must be incredible as well. I mean, Michael, thank you for this 20 minutes together to talk about Timorasso and your company, and definitely exploring the wine of Walter, which is very interesting. And I love to champion these smaller producers, more great varieties on the podcast. I speak with very different people, and I always try to look for something more to cover and try to educate my listeners. And I think you've been a fantastic guest. You told me everything I wanted to learn about Timorasso, and thank you for your time.
It's great to have this opportunity to talk more about a grape variety that, I was talking to Walter this morning, and I was saying that you were coming up, and he said, well, make sure you don't run out of wine. And I said, no, it's all right. We've got some. And he goes, well, we're really selling a lot. And I just thought, that's so nice. And I said to him, Timorasso's, it's our flagship. It's this great variety that we have, I don't know, almost saved from extinction, and that's just such a privilege to be able to work with him.
Yeah, from 6 hectares or less to now, how many have?
Exactly, and all the big names are there now with their Timorasso.
Yeah, exactly. You can still see the interest, which is fantastic.
It is. It's a real success story.
And I'm very happy for Walter and his success and his future for success, and yours, wine trader, which I'm sure you will. Thank you for your time again.
No, thank you. It's been a privilege.
You have listened to the Looking Into Wine podcast with Michael Palij, Master of Wine, on Timorasso. Be sure to go to mattiascarpazza.com and to subscribe to the mailing list. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast and you like to donate, you can do so on our page on mattiascarpazza.com. This episode we talked about Timorasso, and in the next coming episode we have lined up a chat about South Africa with the author. And you can find Looking Into Wine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and every major listening app. Editing and mastering from Samuele Dinar. Editing and mastering from Tommaso Ascoli. And music produced by Samuele Dinardo.